Thank you. Welcome. For all those who are here, please sign the back of the register, and if you needed to sign for the call to the audience, please do so. Roll call?
Ms. Dawn? Here. Mr. Koch? Ms. Hernandez? Here. Mr. Jaramillo? Ms. Quintero?
Present. Do I have approval of the agenda?
Will we approve the agenda as submitted?
Roll call?
Ms. Dawn?
Yes.
Ms. Hernandez?
Yes.
Mr. Jaramillo? Ms. Quintero?
Aye. Governing board comments? Mr. Jaramillo?
Yes, I'd like to say a few good words about the folks that were in the CC Writer video, college, career, community. That was really, really well done. So thank you guys for taking time on putting it together. So.
Thank you. Mr. Hernandez?
Yeah, I thought the ceremony that was organized this morning was beautiful. I wasn't able to be there, but I watched it online. I really liked that there was parents and mostly all school grades in the high school, because that allowed other students to see what it's like and experience that. So thank you guys for that.
That's great. Ms. Carrillo?
I just want to also thank CTE for all that they're doing as far as bringing all this information to the community and outside of our community. I mean, I think it's great. I know we're going to have that tour soon here, and that's so exciting. And I think the kids and the staff there are doing a phenomenal job, and I'm so glad that we're going to be able to highlight them once again, because they deserve. They're hard workers. They produce some incredible things, and so I just want to also thank you for everything that you're doing there.
Thank you. Kudos to everybody. It was great this morning too. I watched it online. It was amazing, amazingly fun. And I do want to also mention condolences to the family, to the student that was passed away from Sunnyside High School. Call to the audience. We have one. Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I am so sorry. Superintendent's report. I'm so sorry.
No, not a problem. It's a serious tone makes us all really kind of reflect. So I appreciate the comments, Ms. Quintero. To just kind of switch gears a little bit. You saw sort of the video recordings that you got to see. We had 135 Sunnyside school seniors who received the acceptance letters. It was a surprise arranged through the University of Arizona. They called the program YES. Special guests there were Dr. Casey Orquidez, who's the Dean of Undergraduate Admissions at the U of A. And now we had also our U of A and Blue Devil alumni, and now U of A freshman, Patrick Robles. He gets bitter pauses than I do, and I'm very, very bothered by that at this time. So he delivered exciting news and for the students and family, but well deserved. That's what we want. When people got to one up us, and he definitely, and well deserved. He's a special student for us. So after this, the assembly, which you didn't see, seniors and their parents were invited to a resource fair in the back, where they were able to set up a variety of stations and then take pictures with Wildcats. So it was much more intimate at that stage. And I think we have a video too that Katrina put together for us.
The University of Arizona yet, but the U of A has noticed your talent, your drive, and your potential, and I'm here to tell you that after reviewing your applications, we said yes! Today is a really special day. We're so excited because this is the very first release of admissions decisions for the 2020 graduating class. And we wanted to start with Sunnyside High School and be able to share a great opportunity to become an Arizona Wildcat with a large group of your senior class? I'm feeling accomplished. I'm proud that my mom could be here. I mean, I knew she would be accepted, but I was super surprised that they did it this way. It was really exciting. We've talked about this for a long time. It's been the plan since day one.
I'm feeling pretty excited. What I plan on doing is studying in communications and broadcasting. I also want to get out in my community. I'm really excited to make an impact on future generations and my own future.
Just to see that everybody has an opportunity regardless of where you come from. If you work hard, it really does pay off.
I'm happy. I feel accomplished that I actually did it.
The U of A has always been my dream school, and I felt really excited to know that I got accepted.
For Sunnyside High School, we have more students admitted for the class of 2020 than we had in the last over the last 4 years. Each year, you know, we've had a good number, but this year already in September, we have more than we had each of the other years.
I feel really accomplished with my school life.
I was really excited, like it caught me by surprise. I'm really excited to go to college, like something I've been really trying for. I'm excited to go somewhere and make a difference in the community, like represent our great community.
So today I was like super stoked, super happy and excited about this new opportunities. And for the fall, I plan on doing like business marketing. So just get new experiences.
But we really want students to feel like they're a part of the University of Arizona, even though they have this whole senior year left. We want them to know of the resources, the opportunities, the people they can talk to from day one.
Bear down.
They're down, Arizona.
We're down Arizona!
Nicely done, huh? So, give her applause. She has great work, Katrina. So we're 135. There, it's a pre-acceptance. They applied in August. These are all students who, if they continue the pathway they're on, should go in there. And so that's where we encourage. Some students will go out of state. Some may not accept the acceptance, but we're starting 135. That's the target, right? So we want to make sure all 135 get somewhere, and preferably the U of A. I mean, that's always been our goal. So I appreciate the support from the U of A. I think there was a great intentionality with them starting with us. They're now a Hispanic serving institution. I talked to NJ Utter, which has coined from other colleagues a phrase that they got to move from being an Hispanic enrolling institution to a Hispanic serving institution, which is a bigger difference, right? It's not just getting them there, how are they going to support our students? So we appreciate the effort, and we'll continue to work on other partnerships with them. We also had our Star Teacher in Pride, Sunnysiders, which celebrated breakfast last week. I look at this and I look out and I see Miss Donna Samarano, who was making fun of me last year for all the pictures and looking the same and the smiles. I remember that very clearly. Thank you, Miss Samarano. And here we go. There's all the pictures again for you to poke fun of. But in all seriousness, the annual event was created to recognize the valuable contributions our teachers and staff. School selects Star Teachers out of one classroom employee to represent the pride of Sunnyside. One teacher to represent the Star Teacher and one out of the classroom employee to represent pride of Sunnyside. They are honored as they reflect on the finest qualities of caring, knowledge, enthusiasm, passion, and excellence in serving our students, families, and our colleagues and communities. So it was great. I think we had one recipient, like the third time at 3 different schools, be recognized, right? Edith Corrales. So that's Andy's really upset because he doesn't want her to get a 4th one somewhere else. So you know how Andy gets competitive. So we'll see. He's hoping she stays there. We also had our special visitors at Lawford Middle School. Lawford Middle School was a 2016 recipient of the Jacob Javits Grant. It's a federal grant, only federal program dedicated specifically to gifted and talented students. Thanks to our partnership with the Arizona Department of Education and the connections with Dr. Williams there. For the past 3 years, Lawford has used these funds for professional teacher training, which allowed for these talented teachers and administration to build up an amazing program, which includes robotics, USBMX, STEM, cycling, track modeling, future cities, and so much more. Congressman Raul Grijalva and Pima County School Superintendent Williams visited Lawford to see firsthand how the Javits Grant was positively impacted the school and the district, and just commented. We had people from the ADE and from the state really kind of talking about the importance of that grant being renewed, which is up for being cut. So it's the context of that visit. Hall of Fame 2019. The Sunnyside Alumni Association will host the 2019 Hall of Fame dinner on November 16th. So if you mark your calendar, November 16th at Gallego Intermediate Fine Arts Magnet School. The Hall of Fame's awards were established to honor individuals or groups who have made notable contributions to the Sunnyside educational system, the community, or their chosen profession. So congratulations to the 2019 Sunnyside Alumni Association Hall of Fame inductees, which are as follows. Pam Benton, who's sitting out here, right, Pam? Debbie Demet, Fred Hambley, Rudy McCormick, Chris Suarez, and Sergeant Will Corrales, who was actually inducted last year, was going to come but could not make it that year, so he's coming to get his award. So hope to see all of you there. That concludes our superintendent's report.
Thank you. Now, call to the audience. It's like- You all may know Yolanda Herrera.
I swear, siblings, what are you going to do with them? What are you going to do with Adam, right, Consuelo? My name is Yolanda Herrera. I am actually, the family has 4 generations who have attended the Sunnyside school districts throughout the many, many years. I'm the current president of the Sunnyside Neighborhood Association. I'm here before you to thank the school district. I'm sorry, first off, I should say, good evening, Madam Chair, Mr. School Superintendent, members of the audience, in TV land and in public. I want to get back to the partnerships that we develop over the generations and the years. This past Saturday, we had the opportunity to partner with Dr. Dugan at Apollo Middle School to discuss the issues with the Liberty Bike Boulevard. We were partnered with, we helped host with the Department of Transportation. We were able to hear some of the issues and concerns that the public has over this bike boulevard that's been in the planning for 10 years. As we all know, that most of our schools are walking, biking schools. So this is something we see as an opportunity for the safety of our children to bike and walk and reduce some of the high traffic and vehicles in these areas in order to keep our students safer. It's an opportunity for the parents to join them. Mr. Holmes, if you would like to join us at some point, I have a trike that you can borrow. So I think you all have an event coming up at the end of the month as well. So if you want to lead the charge on one of my trikes, let me know. We'll put the bells and whistles on it for you. Oftentimes we hear that the South Side never gets anything, that we get ignored. And I just want to remind people that this is an opportunity. It's a federal grant to make our streets safer for our children. So we should look at the positive. This is also to create a lifestyle change. And that's something that we want to rebrand, the lifestyle changes. And I picked that up from a friend of mine who went on a diet, and I said something about a diet, and he goes, no, it's a lifestyle change. So I'm like, that's very smart. So let's start using that. We all are trying to do lifestyle changes. And we also have other opportunities. On Monday, the 16th, Sunnyside Neighborhood Association will have our first meeting back from the summer. It'll be at 6:30 at Valencia Branch Library. We invite everybody to attend if you want to find out what's happening in the neighborhood. The Sunnyside boundaries are Irvington to the north, Valencia to the south, Nogales Highway to the east, and I-19 to the west. On 10/17, we hope to partner again with the district at Mission Manor School for our GAIN event, Getting Arizona Involved in Neighborhoods. It's an opportunity for all of your different groups to do tabling events, get the information out to the masses. On 10/26, Sunnyside Neighborhood will also be participating in the 20th United Way Days of Caring with a cleanup event. We might have to change our ideas on that. Just 2 minutes if you can bear with me. On 10/27, we also have an opportunity with Cyclovia to do resource tables as well. And I would like to invite those 135 students to ride the bikes and be proud, so let's ride. Thank you.
Have a change of life.
Oh, I've gone through the change of life, okay?
No comment.
A little bit different.
Okay.
Move that we approve the consent agenda as submitted?
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Dawn?
Yes.
Ms. Hernandez? Mr. Jaramillo?
Aye.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye. High school security.
So as I'll start as our three gentlemen are coming up to present. The context of this presentation was kind of a response to kind of the question around security and what happens when the student leaves campus, right? What does that look like? What's the protocols we have in place? How do we track things? And so I wanted to get a little bit of a bigger understanding of how we track attendance and what happens when a period is missed, right? Because it's not necessarily a kid leaving campus, but it could be a kid hanging out in the restroom for the whole period, right? So it's a broader kind of discussion. What does that look like? What do we do? What do we don't do, right? And then more importantly, how are things tracked and what are the policy decisions we made to try to disincentivize people missing schools, so that missing classes, in other words. So I'll turn over to Mr. Baca, who can start and kind of give us a run through, and hopefully it answers a lot of some of those questions.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes, and members of the governing board. So as Mr. Holmes mentioned, we'll try to give you as broad of an overview as possible, and then, of course, answer all questions that you may have. We'll start by Security Director Powell. We'll give an overview of kind of all kind of physical protocols. Mr. Castellum is going to talk about more policy levels, and I'll talk a little bit about the technical systems that we have in place to kind of all work together to support these systems and these expectations for attendance. And so I'll pass it on to Mr. Powell to begin.
All right, members, boards, and Mr. Holmes. I just want to talk real quick about the logistics of how our schools are built. Our schools are built with a kind of a layered effort of security. With the first security level is our outside fence areas with one entry point, which would be like a guard shack or a door. The idea is to keep kids in and to keep people out, and with one security access. We also have the cameras in the schools that monitor all major entryways to outside entryways to the doors, most of our gates, as far as they can reach out to some of the fields, even though they're kind of far. But we do have access, and those are on a secured 24-hour, 30-day loop, 24/7. They're always running, and we can pull camera, tape all the time. Our guard shacks are designed to. Their protocol there is to anybody coming in, they document ID people there. Some of our high school guard shacks, even that's where they get their visitor passes, right there at the guard shack when they cross that boundary. Also, the guard shack is used for an exit too. I've been at Sunnyside High School where the kids they're leaving early. The seniors have early release, or they're not taking full classes and they're walking out, and the guard shacks are checking the kids' schedules every day. They're making sure that they're just not leaving because they want to leave. They actually have to prove that they don't have a class that period, or they don't have a class at the end of the day. Our security monitors are about the school. They're walking around. They make sure that they do the sweeps and stuff when there's classes in session. Every student that's not in class should have a pass. If they don't have passes, our monitors are trained and coached to confront those kids, ask them what they're doing, why are they not in class, and also have the communication to be able to identify them and then bring them to the appropriate administrator or person to find out where they should be. And that's the protocols are not to stop, put hands on these older kids. We don't physically stop them from if they're out of class. We don't detain them, but we do guide them. And most times kids are very cooperative. They know they got caught, and then they'll walk with the monitor because they've been identified and we know who they are.
Mr. Holmes has a question.
Oh, yes. Just if you can expound on for one, and I'm just going to ask some questions because it's relevant, I think, to the conversation. How many cameras are in each high school?
Oh, sir, I do not know.
We are almost to 100 cameras on the Desert View campus. I think it's 80-some. And then on the Sunnyside campus, I believe it's around 65, right around that time. So we have, the high schools are where we have by far the most cameras.
The other question I have is how how many monitors are each high school?
Each monitor is designated 7 monitors.
Plus the guard check, or that includes the guard check?
That includes the guard check.
Who then rotates?
They rotate out.
They rotate out
Yeah.
of that. And I just want, there was a concern about the gate issues, particularly at Sunnyside High School. Has that been resolved with that sliding gate, to your knowledge? The one that's for the auto shop, that tends to be the place where people go and forget to close that?
Yeah, those gates are supposed to be closed during school hours from first bell to last bell, and they are supposed to make their rounds and have those gates closed. That would be the responsibility of the security team. I'm not sure if it's been resolved. I haven't heard any complaints since.
So
the
last time we come,
we talked.
and then just lastly, every single student must have their ID on them. Is that something that's monitored, and is that something that we continue to make sure is a must for every kid?
I'm not sure what that policy. Are you guys?
That's correct.
That's correct.
That's correct. I mean, it's one of those that, I mean, they definitely, the expectation is to be wearing their student IDs as well as staff members wearing their IDs, right? To be able to identify students, making sure there are students. Now, there definitely on a daily basis, there needs to be reminders, it's that level of reminders. Also, I've seen it where they do ID checks in classes, right, at the beginning of the day. I remember the ROTC class, everybody stand up, let me check IDs, and they would check them. So the expectation is for them to wear them, but we don't have 100% full cooperation just yet.
So play this out with me, and sorry, I know I'm hogging this thing, but I think it to me, these are things that I think are important for us to know as we're setting the stage for kind of the follow-up. So if I'm a kid, they know who just doesn't show a schedule, just says, I'm just leaving, I go out the front gate. What do we tell monitor? What's the direction we can monitor if a kid just says, I'm leaving and heading out?
So the students that are on reduced schedule, on their IDs, they have an identification that shows that they're on a reduced schedule, okay? Both campuses have a different symbol that they use, but that's how they identify.
But if I'm a student that doesn't have reduced, like I'm a sophomore and I just gonna leave, and I'm gonna walk out the front and.
So our monitors also have access to Power School.
Mhm.
They have laptops there at the guard check. So they go ahead and double check that.
But if-
They've been trained on how to look up a schedule on Power
Mhm.
School. They can look up each individual student that will show if they have a reduced schedule or not.
What if I just walk out and not show my ID? What is the monitor supposed to do with that?
Well, we've trained the monitors not to be physically confrontational, but they can be verbally confrontational. They will make the announcements over the radio that there is a student leaving and it's this student. But we're not going to.
We don't physically stop them.
We're not going to physically put our hands on them and stop them. We tell them to be safe. We tell them to stay out of the roads. We ask them where they're going. We ask them if they're coming back. And those are questions and information that we can get. But
That's where the use of cameras also come in, because we're able to identify those students that do leave campus without permission. And we're never gonna, hold the gates or hold them or detain them. If they walk off, we try to, we don't wanna get confrontational, but we try to identify who they are and deal with that immediately. Sometimes that's a phone call home right away. Sometimes it's going back to your team and saying, help me identify who this student is. We need to, address this first thing in the morning. So there's definitely always an attempt for a follow-up anytime a student leaves campus, because we always feel the liability, right? If one of our students leaves campus and anything can occur, and we don't want that negative,
they're also
situation.
instructed that our campus monitors are exactly what their title is. They're campus monitors, and we're not going to have them chasing kids through neighborhoods or through the desert or across streets and stuff. That they will just, will let the kids know and identify their parents or.
Unless they're
6-year-old. Okay. High school, yeah. So high school monitors are not chasing, but no, our elementary monitors have, or middle school monitors have physically picked up kids and detained them until we can get more help there. But not at the high school level.
Ms. Hernandez.
Because that gate next to the auto body shop is still a concern, and it doesn't seem like there's been any communication, can we expect moving forward that there's some sort of communication to at least the monitors on that campus to let them know of that?
Absolutely, yeah.
And then follow up, I know that the last time you mentioned you guys were checking the radios to see which ones worked, which ones didn't.
Yes.
Did we get an update on that?
Yeah, I put the Friday report in.
Friday
Did you?
report.
Oh, I must have missed it.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, okay. That was
So it's
it
not
for
bad.
now. Thank you.
We learned a whole bunch from that Friday report.
Recap, just quick recap.
Oh, yeah, we were able to identify, we inventoried every single radio in the district. We identified some radios that will be going out, or are getting old, and they're not making new batteries and stuff. We have about 5 or 6 different models that are out there right now. And most of them work, and I should say all of them work. They just needed a little fine tuning. Some new batteries, some of our antennas and stuff need to be replaced. It was actually a really good stepping point to where we're going to be at and where we can improve now. We were able to even train the principals in the school campuses how they can order these parts and replace them themselves. And it's going to be, so I figure probably in the next 2 years our radios are going to be right back where they were when we first bought them. So with the program that we're setting up. And they're going to be inventoried so much better too. We're going to put all our radios into the Destiny program. And so they're going to be assigned and be tracked. And they're just not going to be on a spreadsheet, but they're actually going to be assigned to employees and have a better.
Mr. Jaramillo?
Now thank you. With the student that could be leaving campus, is there an intervention with the SRO officers? Could they get involved if they left?
Yeah, I mean, leaving truancy is illegal. I mean, it's a crime. We can crime. We don't have a truancy like system that we push out. They can be, I guess, if it becomes to a point where it's going to be harmful to themselves or harmful to their education or something. We can, but, I'm not in the business of calling cops on the kids for missing school. So I'm gonna we'll try to do other interventions before we get to that level.
I have one quick question. There is no way, right, that our IDs can be duplicated and put, like, they couldn't get, like, if a kid made a copy of it and then stuck his picture on it with early release kind of thing, that couldn't happen, right? Because we're awesome, right?
I wish I could say that is a foolproof system. I'd be lying if I said that there's no absolute way. I mean, if someone is so inclined, they could even go off and purchase the software that's used and purchase a printer and print it using the same hardware and software and just replace the image file. Replacing the codes that are embedded on the card is a little more difficult, but it's all possible. That's not something that I've seen as there's really no incentive to do so. I mean, to steal a fellow student's identity in that way, we really haven't seen much kind of interest in that area.
Okay.
More so the digital side of that, looking for other students' passwords. That's the area we put a little bit more focus on.
Okay.
But to answer your question, it is theoretically possible, to be perfectly honest. I just don't think that that's a very common practice, if at all. I've never heard of a student trying to do that. More often, they just try to get rid of it and throw it away and pretend like they're not responsible for carrying it.
For the students that are able to leave early, what does that symbol look like on the badge?
I don't know off the top of my head because it's a sticker.
Yeah, we put a special sticker on the back of their ID card. And then our monitors have a list of students, so they know who is to leave early or not. And they're very diligent about checking who's leaving. Just ask Ms. Gallegos. We'll keep her on our.
They thought I was leaving.
What type of sticker is it? Is it one that can just easily be peeled off or bought? No.
Well, could it be peeled off? Yeah, if they got some gum away to it maybe, but no. Usually what they do is they'll check the sticker and they'll check the student list. So it's a double kind of thing.
But it's not like a red dot where anyone can just buy, right?
No, we used to have
an actual
orange
symbol.
dots,
Okay.
and that spread like wildfire. So everybody had an orange dot, so we would send them back and say you're not on the list.
Got it.
So yeah, we don't use the orange dots anymore.
Okay.
Don't tell me.
Madam Chair, Superintendent Holmes, and members of the governing board, members of the audience,
want to talk a little bit about our attendance policy that we've had in place the last 3 years, going on year 4. I'd like to start with talking a little bit about the lead academic interventionist at each high school. At STAR, we have an academic interventionist, but at the Sunnyside and Desert View High School, we have a lead academic interventionist. And they're charged with the responsibility of overseeing the attendance policy. So they do this on a daily basis. Not only do they identify the attendance issues that are occurring on campus, they're also identifying those students needing interventions, right? So as they're looking up students in terms of issues with attendance, our system tells us a lot, right? In terms of grades, in terms of absences, in terms of log entries, whether there's some behavior issues there. And they're also identifying those students that are credit deficient, right? And we start building a list of those students that need credit opportunities to take courses to recuperate some of these credits. So we do make a list, and quarterly they are referred to Star Academic High School. I have to say that the lead academic interventionists are not alone in this. They need extremely a lot of help, and we get that help from other administrators and also our teachers. So we do rely on our teachers a lot to help us with this work. So at registration, students and parents sign this attendance policy document, so they're well aware of the policy. I'll quickly say when students reach 10 absences, whether those are excused or non-excused, they go on to non-credit status. So let me talk a little bit about the support we get from our teachers. So all of our teachers are assigned a CC prep class that is done by grade level. So every Monday, and these are the systems that are in place, every Monday they receive a report. And it starts with 3 absences, then goes to 5, then goes to 8. So at 5 absences, and they're having conversations with students, right? They're having conversations about attendance, what I mentioned earlier in terms of grades, and sometimes just discussions, right? In terms of what are the tough issues at school. So at 5 absences, a letter goes home, and a teacher has to record a log entry. So that tells us, and the lead AIs will check that. Otherwise, they'll keep getting this notification the student won't come off that list. So once the log entry is inputted, we know that there's a conversation that took place amongst a teacher and student. So at 8 absences, the academic interventionist will put the student on an attendance contract and notify parents. Also, a letter goes home. And as I mentioned earlier, at 10 absences, the student goes on non-credit status, and there's definitely an appeal process for those students at the end of each semester to appeal their absences, because we're very aware that sometimes they can't control these absences due to medical issues, due to personal issues that are going on at home. And so we definitely try to work with our students so that they do earn that credit. Since this attendance policy has been in place, we're currently at 93% attendance rate at the high schools, both Sunnyside and Desert View, and Star Academics in the mid to high 80s. It fluctuates a little bit. But our attendance rate has not dropped below 90% since we've implemented this attendance policy. And again, this isn't to, we always talk about the hammer and the heart, right? This isn't to hammer students. Really, this really has provided us that opportunity to have conversations with students. So we're paying attention to detail in terms of every student's academic experience. Every student is interacting with an adult. Again, talking about those pieces there. So, and we're in the business to make sure our students graduate. So we do want to provide them with that intervention support and find out root cause of what's going on if they are having an attendance issue. Moving forward here to truancy, because I know that's a hot topic in terms of how do we deal with students that are truant. One of the things that we brought our high schools together this past summer, we talked about where are the vulnerable times throughout our bell schedule, throughout the day that students will ditch, right? And so we noticed that on Tuesdays, because we do have a different bell schedule on Tuesdays, that we had back-to-back lunches. And during that time, students were kind of getting lost, right? It didn't take much. It took 5 minutes to go hide, and then you got mixed in with the lunch crowd, and you were double lunching. And so what we did is we changed that. You know, is that you, Mr. Holmes? Is that what you're saying? So what we did is we identified that issue, and we eliminated that opportunity, that temptation for students. So now there's about approximately an hour between lunches, so they don't have that opportunity to get mixed in with the crowd. So that's one of the pieces that we definitely addressed. Obviously, through these attendance report, we see anomalies, right? We get absences per period. So if somebody has 10 absences, fourth period, we'll take a wild guess there that they're probably still double lunching somehow, right? First period absences sometimes are an anomaly as well. So we got to have discussions with students. Are they getting to school late? Or are they just having an issue with that teacher, or having an issue getting to school? So we definitely have discussions to find out what's going on. When it says they're disciplinary actions, and we put that there purposefully, when kids are truant, we don't want to put them out of school. So we don't want to suspend them out of school and give them what they want, right? We want to address the issues. So, both high schools have adopted, or all three high schools have adopted a check-in, check-out policy. So they're checking in with the student. They put them, I don't want to use the word contract, but it's more of an agreement where they have to get signatures from students. And so there's different pieces to that agreement. And obviously we have, instead of a suspension, we have detention, lunch and after school detention, but that's after we see that there's defiance of authority after being talked to multiple times. What I found very interesting from having conversations with both high schools, especially at Sunnyside, because they have this program there, is they have a teen court at Sunnyside High School through their law academy. And so the students have taken on these truancy issues, and what we have found is that the students are a lot tougher than the adults are in terms of consequences. So they are giving these students like 2 weeks of service learning, where they got to do community service on campus. And if that doesn't work, then we go the in-school suspension route, but with pieces there to help them get through these issues that they're experiencing. So that is the pieces I have for attendance policy.
So we just wanted to talk quickly about some of the other systems that work behind the scenes to support, as this is a multi-layered approach of systems of support and mitigating attendance issues. The technical systems that we have in place. Mr. Castellum referenced some of the letters that are generated, and so we have systems that monitor how many absences have accrued, and then at that trigger mark, whether it's 5, 8, 10, the letters are automatically generated and reports are sent to the staff at the schools who are monitoring it. We also have, of course, our automated calling system, and that calling system. And I know we're not referencing the elementary schools, but I will kind of try to speak a little bit to it because they fall under the same parameters. At 9:30 a.m. and at 1:30 p.m., a phone call goes out for all students who have recorded an absence for the day. The 9:30 a.m., of course, is primarily dedicated towards all the grade levels, but our elementary kids, we want to make sure that if there's a parent is notified that they have an absence, and of course, even if they hadn't recorded that absence, then obviously that's the alert that we want to get out. But the purpose is to just give that parent notification. In addition to that, a period notification at the end of the day is sent out for high school students so that we can identify which periods, and parents are notified which periods they missed for that day. So that's part of the automated system in place. So there's just a lot of different processes that we've embedded in working with the high schools and looking at the attendance policy and merging the attendance policy with some of the data integration side of PowerSchool and how we expect teachers to record attendance so that we can inform those systems that are making those phone calls and helping provide intervention steps for those students. That's kind of the overview process. I did bring to your attention as well for your reference the last 5 years of ADM, so membership, but also next to that is the average daily attendance. And you can see at the Sunnyside level, and this column, this is our entire district-wide, at the K-8 level and then the 9-12 level. And you can kind of see the patterns. Last year, we did see a slight uptick from the previous years. So that's something we definitely want to keep an eye on and see if we can kind of keep it going back down in this other area. But we do, as Mr. Gustellan referenced, since the implementation of that attendance policy, at the high school level, it's been significantly down as compared to previous years. So those are some of the systems and the data that kind of speak to kind of what's happening on attendance slide at 20,000-foot view. So with that, we want to ask if you have any questions and be happy to answer any.
I have one after you.
Okay. That was very good.
You like that?
Yeah. First of all, going back to the security protocols, I think it's great that we have as many cameras out there. I remember when we first started, there were just a few here and there that we were able to get in there, so I'm glad that we now have pretty much completed the installations of the cameras and that there are, at all these different locations, especially when it comes to the doorways, entryways, and things like that. I'm glad, we have the guard shacks up now, not just at the high schools like when we first started, but at the middle schools and more security, in that area. I know that, it's important to have working radios, so I'm glad that we now have that inventory and that we now know exactly what is necessary and the batteries and whatever it is going to be necessary in order to make sure that we have the working radios. And that, we get the equipment like the batteries that are important. They go down so quickly, and so it's important that we have that, and that I like the checkout, system that is going to be put into place there. I think it's important that we know exactly, where the radios are at all times. It's I think critical that we keep track of those kind of things. I know, working with that myself on a daily basis at the prisons, I know how critical that piece of communication is. And, I'm just really happy to have you here because I heard you say that you're not in the business of calling the police on our kids. And that made me so happy. I appreciate that. I don't think any of us here are in that mentality kind of thing of not calling the police just, with them being truant is critical, because there's just so many reasons. But I'm glad to hear that the parents are being called if they do leave and we do find out who they are. Because if they leave like that and they're not going to tell you who they are and they're not going to tell you they're coming back, they're obviously leaving upset. And so I think it's really important that parents know, hey, your child left and we don't know why they didn't want to, tell us. And so it is important, for the safety of our children that we have that. So, but, thank you for that. As far as the attendance policies are concerned, I'm glad to see that it seems to me that the policies are now put together in such a way that more people are aware of what's going on. We have so many students, and in the past, sometimes I think they got lost. I remember we used to do a lot of, retentions.
Detention hearings.
And during the retentions, we find out a child was out for 25, 30, 35 days, 45 days. And we didn't understand that. How does that happen? And the parents would come up and tell us, I never even knew he was out. I never knew he wasn't there, time and time and time again. But it seems like now that doesn't happen because you guys are having this policies and procedures that you catch things that are happening after 5 absences, after 10 absences. You're catching it. And you're able to connect with somebody. You're connecting with the students, first of all, and you're connecting with the parents. But the teachers are catching it more. They have to do that communication before they, so that they can get away from their computer, and that it'll say on there that they took care of it. They had that communication. So I think that's excellent. That communication is happening. So we'll have less people falling through the cracks and. It might still happen once in a while, but it's not going to be something that happens often. So I'm really was glad to hear because I feel that that makes everybody more aware, the parents more aware, the teachers more aware of what's going on with that. As far as the attendance monitoring is concerned, I'm glad that we have that, those phone calls. I'm hopeful that they've improved, and I'm sure they have with you here, because before, I remember when I had children in school and I was getting those phone calls, there was always mistakes going on. No, because I would sign that paper saying my child was allowed to go on that band trip.
And you still get a call.
And I would still get a call saying they were absent and stuff like that. But I'm sure that we now have a much better technology. So that way, what do you mean? And oh yeah, okay. At first it would be like, but then it would be, oh yeah, wait a minute, I signed that paper. They're on a band trip or, those kind of things. But that was so long ago that I'm sure that we have the new technology now that doesn't have that. So, but I'm glad that we're connecting, like you said, the technology with the things that are going on at the site levels. So, this is great. I'm really happy to hear the different steps that we're taking to make sure that everybody stays secure.
One of the pieces we left out is kudos to our parents because they have access to Parent Connect. So one of the, our parents have stepped up to be engaged in making sure they're taking a more active role. And it's set up to a point where I had a parent a couple weeks ago say, I love the alerts, right? So if a grade drops, they get the alert. If there's an attendance, they get an alert. So now they're calling the school to verify so that piece of, well, wait a minute, why were you absent today? And if sometimes the automated system, if the attendance was sent in and it was already sent in, the student showed up tardy, but it was excused, that call still goes home. And then the parent calls to verify at times. And then we obviously correct it. But I just wanted to point that piece out, that they're playing just a bigger role using Parent Connect.
This year, I can speak to a clear increase in the number of parents who have signed up for their parent portal accounts. As that's grown every year, but this year we did continue to see a large increase. And so that level of communication, because, and to your point of, we will err on the side of over-communicating rather than under-communicating, but I don't think that it's a significant problem in terms of parents who excuse an absence and then get, multiple calls saying, there's unexcused absences. I don't find that to be a complaint. There are the occasional complaints of inadvertent phone numbers, and they get phone calls about students who they don't have no relation to. And so we monitor that closely and clean those out as we get notice about them, but that is something that does happen from time to time. But that to me is a symptom of making sure that we're over-communicating rather than under-communicating. And so, but we do remedy those as soon as we find out about a misincident. On this, you have a question?
Yeah, so how often / how do we reach out to parents to sign up for the portal?
So that process is a regular process. We've trained every office manager, every front office person about how you generate that step. We have at every parent student conferences, they're reminded of it. At all registrations, we encourage and we kind of and some of the other systems we're putting into place. For example, we have an online registration system now. We haven't kind of over promoted it to be the primary source of registering your students. We still rely on our existing pre-registration process that's existed for years. But now that we have an online registration process, that has actually added incentive because the convenience you gain by having online registration means that you don't have to sit and wait in line and wait for copies to be made. You can kind of scan your utility bill and have it uploaded just as part of your registration paperwork that you're doing on the couch from the couch at home. But in order to do that, you need to have a parent portal account. So that's that incentive to have those parents create parent portal accounts as another one. And as Mr. Castellan referenced, now once they get a parent portal account, they realize that as part of the automatic parent portal, you get a weekly, like either Sunday night or Monday morning, I forget which it is, but kind of summary of what happened to your student the last week. Any fees that are due, what their current grades are, any absences that they had, and any other relevant information that parents opt into. So those things are all adding more communication to parents. And so, we're to be frank, I wish it was I don't have the percentage of parents that have it. It's approximately 50%. I mean, it's in that ballpark. It's not as high as I would like it to be. I wish it could be, in that 75 to 80%, possibly 90% of parents who actually have that. But that's a priority for us every year to kind of just keep getting the parents aware and having the front office encourage parents to sign up for those accounts.
And you mentioned fees. Is that related to outstanding balances from?
Yeah, library.
Cafeteria?
Library books that, the fees, or sometimes, lunch balances, things like that. Any other fees? Sometimes they're assessed a fee for if they damage the laptop that they're assigned. There might be a fee associated with that. So those fees are summarized in those reports as well.
Don't go away.
Yes.
So speaking of the portals, do you delete them during the summer so that the parents don't keep getting these weekly summaries?
So they're deactivated during the summer. So access to the parent portal is deactivated in the summer. However, that is kind of a parent controlled aspect of the system. So the summertime, I have received reports of parents who've kind of gotten more of those this summer. And so on those case-by-case basis, I followed up on it and made sure what's going on there. So I have heard of a couple cases that slipped through the cracks. But the access to the parent portal is deactivated this summer for a variety of reasons. One is it's irrelevant information at that time.
Right.
Probably equally important, if not more important, those students are motivated to see what their next year's schedule is every summer. And so they are just hitting that thing and they're trying to get in there, and the counselors are kind of calling us up saying, don't let them see this, they're not ready, So that's another reason why we make a concerted effort to deactivate parent portal access during the summertime. But I'm aware of a couple of situations where we've had to kind of make sure that those unnecessary emails weren't going out, and we went in and followed up on a few of those.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Also, going out at the end of the day when you do the attendance for missing children, at the end of the day, are you concerned about sex trafficking? So if a girl is missing second period and you don't tell the parents till the end of the school that she's been missing, or is that an issue or concern that we need to have?
The timing of it is important. The reason, so the second period, the 10 a.m., it's between 9:30 and 10 a.m. It starts at 9:30, but by the time they get done, it's between 9:30 and 10, is to capture any students who didn't show up for the morning sessions. And then that 1:30 p.m. is to capture any students who didn't show up in classes they expected to between then and the afternoon. Of course, that would be of concern if we had any type of indication that this is something we need to work out. But the notification process is kind of that preliminary parent notification to let them know we expected your student to be in class. He, she weren't in class, and then parents will be communicating.
Yeah, so this is where also cameras come in play. I mean, if there was certainly something of that serious nature, we can track as far as, if the student leaves, we've got a history of a person leaving the campus, where they left, kind of those things that could help and inform. Unfortunately, not everything's in perfect real time, and so if it's something that serious, so we have information that could provide great detail if anything that horrific would occur.
Right. So, so because the concern lately is on Facebook, I see Midvale, Valencia, there's been stealing children, young ladies and young guys. So I'm just wondering, is that something we need to be concerned about in the schools with being gone?
Yeah, I think like every other attendance, I mean, we don't draw all the conclusions, but I think that's why we've tried to create places that are not penetrable by folks that don't. I mean, that's why our elementary schools have, the gates in the front. Why we have those monitors there. Even our elementary schools are around the perimeter have cameras as well, and so there's vigilance there. If someone bad person wants to do something bad, unfortunately, that they're going to go at no ends. But our goal is to try to prohibit as much as possible, and create as a safe school so that people still feel comfortable. But the fact that they can't get into the campus is I think the main concern of ours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I just that popped into my head because I just saw something again, and it's like, so I just, that's the concern for high school students. I mean, yeah, so anyway, thank you. Good job. Ms. Hernandez. Sorry.
Last question. For the students that are youth on their own, is there an indicator when you send out reports that, like, would alert us if, for example, if we have a lot of youth on their own that are missing school, to reach out to them? So I know that, like, does it different? Do
Yes.
you have a differentiator?
Araceli Mendoza, who is it Mendoza? Yeah, I don't know why her name is escaping me right now. You know, the coordinator who helps oversee the youth on their own programs is actively involved in you know, kind of communicating with those students, monitoring attendance. They do get reports on those situations. So there are layers of oversight in that area.
So I think, just want to make sure we're speaking, because one is our McKinney-Vento,
Yeah.
which she oversees, which are tagged in our system, which is our homeless youth. Our Yodel kids are on a separate list. They're not necessarily tagged they're not necessarily flagged in our system specifically as Yodel, but there is a list that specifically our counselors keep, and there is a Yodel presence on there. So there's a matchup when there's issues to double check file-wise if they're, what their status is particularly. The ones that are, however, flagged in our system are McKinney-Vento.
We have a way of tracking them as well. You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Dun, dun, dun.
Which one? Which page? The next one?
Mr. Encinas.
Thank you. Ms. Quintero, Board Member, Superintendent Holmes. Ms. Maloney and I come to you tonight requesting that you approve the 2020 annual expenditure budget to reflect a correction that was required as a result of the new format for which the forms will fill out this year. The state revised the format and the forms whereby they eliminated a lot of the manual input that was required under the old worksheets, and they linked certain reports from ADE to the budget itself, and therefore would automatically transfer into the actual budget document rather than having to be manually inputted. During the process of setting the tax rates for this coming year, which for your information, this year's Sunnyside tax rate dropped 5.5% to a little over last year's tax rate was $5.33 per $100 of assessment. I'm sorry, this year's tax rate is $5.33 per $100 of assessed valuation. Last year's was $5.66 per $100 of assessed valuation. The average home saved about $26 in taxes this year over last year's rate. Just to give you a reference, back in 2007, our tax rate was $9.15 per 100. So it's dropped down from $9.15 in 2007 to $5.33, 34 cents per 100 this year. So during that process of establishing that tax rate, we were informed by the ADE that for some reason the A455 report that we utilized to prepare the budget did not contain correct information. So we went and had access to the report. We were able to make the revisions to the budget, and in doing so, we also at this point in time saw an opportunity, really an obligation, to revise the budget balance carry forward from a projected $3 million that we had projected back in July to the actual amount of $1.766 million. After all is said and done, the net decrease to the M&O budget from the adopted budget that the board approved in July is a decrease of $377 and $377,210 from the adopted amount. So at this point in time, we request the governing board to approve the revision number 1 to the annual 2020 expenditure budget. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Mr. Holmes?
Just for clarification, next board meeting, you actually wrap up the 19 budget with final numbers, which then gets updated again for the 20 budget. I just want to make sure there's a cycle here of approval that results in more changes. So once they rectify all the books, this number will again change.
At the next board meeting, we'll come to the governing board for approval of the 2019 annual financial report. That annual financial report will basically reflect total expenditures by the district for all funds, including the M&O budget. If there are changes to the budget balance carry forward, that amount will be reflected there. If that's changed, then prior to May 15th of 2020, we'll come to the governing board with a revision number 2 of the budget. So,
Okay.
okay.
The questions? Question? Question? Ms. Dong?
I would like to move that we approve the fiscal year 2020 annual expenditure budget, revision number 1 as submitted.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Strong?
Yes.
Ms. Hernandez? Mr. Jaramillo?
Aye.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. ASBA. Sure.
I'll go ahead and start. ASBA, usually, just for context, if you were watching the previous board meeting, it really is both a legislative agenda setting, but also it's their annual law conference. And so in the law conference piece, there's the way they start, they have a pre-conference with very important topics for people that want to kind of sign up. There was one in relationship to changing demographics. I know Dr. Garcia gave an update on specifically the changing demographics, how schools are actually resegregating, which was an interesting topic. I didn't get to attend it, but I got a recap from a colleague of mine, which, because we got there the next day, specifically referencing kind of how the resegregation of schools are falling in line with kind of shifts in demographics, and what are the implications of that as, you know, Brown versus Board versus V Board, right, happened in the 50s, and here we are. I'm not sure any better off as a result of segregation of schools. Maybe policy has changed, but it was interesting dialogue. But that's the context of most of these sessions. It's around kind of law, policy, and how these things are affecting public schools. The Thursday morning recap is just that's a recap of all the current changes at the legislature, things that happened in the previous legislative session that have impact on schools and the policies that have implications. For example, whether or not what the procurement rules regarding when you have to take the lowest bidder or not. So there was a change by the legislators that said you have to take the lowest bid no matter what. Then as a result of some complaints, the legislators actually changed the policy, so now you can actually still do 3 bids and go with the one that's going to be the best and most robust. So it's those types of details that they get into. There's the people that are actually presenting it add a little humor in it, so it keeps people very engaged in the morning. I thought they did a really nice job of recapping all the policies and really referencing those things that are really important, such as what are these policies that are great and feel-good policies but receive no funding for. For example, there's now a requirement for doing eye testing, right? Vision testing, which we're fortunate to work with the Lions Club to do that, but it's an unfunded mandate, right? So it's these things that we all believe are good for kids, but at what point does ASBA actually support it? It's not the feel good, but is it going to cost schools, districts more? And how do you then get in front of these things without creating policy that creates more burdens on schools, even though they're good things, right? And so those are the general kind of overviews that actually help us recap. And if there's things that kind of fall through the cracks that we didn't know about, then there's an opportunity for us to say, hey, Hector, I just found out this policy dropped and was off our radar. But fortunately, at this session, that was not the case. We actually have stayed on top. Thank you, Dr. Favela, for keeping us honest with the new shifts in policy that keeps us pretty up to date with our changes. And that's part of why you see ongoing policy revisions. It's because they're updated based upon new legislation, and that's what you'll continue to see as we get through first, second, and then approval of the reads. There was an interesting topic and I'll end and then pass to Ms. Dong and Mr. Jaramillo. Topic specifically on kind of the division of the country and what that means for certain districts' responses, right, from issues of transgender students to issues of patriotism. So there was certainly a lot of discussion around difference of opinion, and then really he was an attorney, was giving his own discussion how it impacted his work in Texas, but his big tagline was, "But I would make sure you talk to your attorneys in Arizona and the people that you would," right? But it put some things in perspective on how working in schools in this day and age has become more complicated by divisions around these big ideas that are alive and well in our nation. And that division plays itself out in our schools each and every day. And the difference between the rights of students relative to these policy changes or policy debates versus the rights of adults in the organization. And how do you distinguish between those two, particularly as you're dealing with, for example, a student taking a knee at a football game, right? Versus an employee who refuses to recite the pledge, right? All are unique issues of patriotism that will play out differently based upon the rules and laws associated with the state and then the school district. So that was kind of a really interesting topic that I thought made for a really nice morning presentation that keeps people hopping. Sometimes they do the Ben Franklin one that really nice and engaging, but I'm not sure everyone stays around for that. So this was a good morning.
You want to go?
Okay.
Ms. Dong.
Is that right? Okay. A couple of things. I'll talk a little bit about the breakout sessions that we had at the law conference. It was one of the best law conferences that I've been to, simply because they were always great as far as the breakout sessions, always. This time they had 3 keynote speakers that were just amazing, and they all had books, and people ran out there to buy their books in droves because they were such great inspirational speakers. A couple of really quick things about some of the things that I went to and learned. We always talk about how we work with outside agencies, social service agencies, and things like that, and I think it's important. I'm still, even, a couple weeks ago heard how much easier it is to work in our district than to try to get into some of the other districts, which I will not name at this point in time. But that makes me feel good that I know that it's people are here to make sure that they can get as many services as possible. We just have to make sure that when we do allow them to come in, that we make sure they all have the liability insurances that they're supposed to be having, just in case anything does go wrong, that everybody is covered as far as liabilities are concerned. They said that's the main problem that sometimes they have, is that some school districts allow people to come in without making sure that the liability insurance is there. And it's not that difficult to get that liability insurance. We just got to make sure that they do that. I went to because we're in the mix of it, the school resource and elections, and so a lot of it stayed pretty much the same as what we've always been hearing as far as school resources are concerned. But one of the things that I learned that was different was that whoever is running the override election can go and take pictures of actual things going on, places and people, and put them into the literature. It doesn't have to, it can be real people, as long as we don't go onto the Sunnyside website and get pictures from the Sunnyside website, because that belongs to the Sunnyside. But if one of the committee members wants to go and take pictures of what's happening inside of our CTE programs, the playground equipment or whatever, orchestra, concert, any of those kind of things, we're able to use that according to the lawyers that we're talking about it. I'm really glad that the 4-hour block, we were all excited. We're so excited about that. But there's still some work to be done. And so we need to make sure that we keep pushing it. Because even though it was a big victory, it's not the end. there's still a few things that we need to work on and we need to polish up in order for it to really be as effective as it needs to be for our students. And one of them, of course, is the models that need to come out. It was thrown at us right at the very end, and so everybody, all the districts, just did what they could at the lateness of it coming in. But now we need to go in and do what we need to do to get it going. Let's see, I won't go into every single thing that we had there, but a couple of other really quick things here is as far as the agenda for that Saturday is concerned. There were a lot of things. It was like forever a meeting because even though it looks like it all makes sense, there were some things were brought up by people that showed that it's not all just cut and dry. And we needed to take a look at some of these things. One of the things that did pass was they're going to fight for the 21-year-old CTE student to be in our classes, not just at the sites. So that's something that I think we all need to know that that's a possibility. There was one that I just didn't understand. The one that we have here on the on protecting the LGBTQ rights. Believe it or not, that was one of the contentious ones. You would think that it wouldn't be, that protecting LGBTQ rights is just a no-brainer. But the one person that was really adamant against it was saying that we are separating them, as a group, instead of allowing them to be equal with everybody else in the group and not get this special protection. But if you think about it, that means we shouldn't protect people for gender, of ethnicities and races, and that just goes to everything. So it just didn't make sense, and thank goodness there was an extremely small amount of people that voted against it, and it passed with the majority of the people voting for it. Thankfully, they're going to go after the one that requires public accountability for taxpayer dollars. That has to be included in charter and private schools, that they be held accountable also. They've been, continuously going after this. That's not something they're going to let die. They feel better this year around that they're going to be, because they have been chipping at it a little bit, but they're really going to try to chip a lot more at it as far as getting that done. There were a couple of word changes here and there. You'll be getting this through Chris Cotterman if he hasn't sent it to you already. I know that Jaramillo and I have already received it, the policies, and I can forward that to you. But things like maximize state funding for nationally competitive salaries to attract, recruit, and retain talented teachers and staff was only changed by 2 words. Maximize state funding for nationally and locally competitive salaries to attract, recruit, and those kind of things. And so they will send you all that. A couple of them had some things that were just for their particular district, and they presented it, and it got paid. It got voted on, as far as to hold harmless all districts from repayment of budget funds occurring from lawsuits involving centrally valued property. In other words, sometimes they make mistakes at the state level, and then when they find it, they want you to pay it all back all of a sudden, and you've already spent it. And so they're wanting not to be held liable to be paying it all back so quickly, or if at all, because it was their mistake. You spent it. Now, what are you going to be able to do, as far as that is concerned? So it was a great law conference, and a lot of great policies that came through. But I'll make sure that gets sent to you. One of the things, thankfully, that went down. Sometimes me and Jaramillo would look at each other like, why? They wanted us to pass this thing saying that if a parent tells the staff that they can give their child a non-prescriptive drug in the school, then the school is allowed to do so. For example, CBD, which is unregulated, but not illegal in this state. Those kind of things, but everybody, like, liabilities are just enormous. If something goes wrong, if the substance is not regulated, then who knows what the staff member is being required to give that child. And if something happens, you know, we're liable. So thankfully, it was voted down.
Romeo, is there anything left?
Covered pretty much.
He actually went, no, he went to different ones. We went
The one
to, we went to
that,
complete different ones, except for the thing on Saturday. We went to
The
completely
one that
different ones.
was really a highlight was the census for this upcoming year. And, you know, and let's face it, there's gonna be a lot of people that are not gonna wanna fill out the questionnaire for whatever reason they may have. But they shouldn't, they should take the initiative to fill it out because why? Because it means money for our districts. Immigration, they touched on, how ICE could not come into our schools or schools, Border Patrol and BP, and come in and request information, especially if it's FERPA information. That's a big no-no. And I asked, what's her name? Miss, she gave us some presentation, her and her colleague. What would happen once they left our school? Okay, that falls into a whole different category. Once they leave our school grounds and they're headed home and they reach their place of residence, it's a whole different ballgame. You know, the best thing is not to answer the door if you don't know who's there. To encourage them not to answer the door, because there'll be consequences as well. You know, especially if they're youngsters, they really don't care. Period. They touched on a lot of on the funding, like Ms. Dong said, on how IDA can be funded and not funded, who falls into different categories, how students are classified, and how some of them could be, but they're not. It's a real fine line of how people can qualify, or students can qualify for that as well. Also, on videos, they touched on videos. Who would have access to the videos if there was something that was committed? I mean, we just can't give up that information, even though they request it. There's protections to the district as well, until, I guess it's court ordered. But until then, we shouldn't give any information out. They did touch on the truancy issue, the attendance policies. So pretty much of what we covered this afternoon was covered there as well. So that's pretty much all I have. And the delegation was long. A lot of people were pretty long-winded. They were pretty, you know, they were, I don't know. They give you a booklet or a little handout of what's going to be discussed. But apparently a lot of people don't take time to review the information that's in there prior to grabbing the mic. And it gets to be, a lot of that stuff gets to be repetitious, and it tends to make it for a long day. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for going in. I didn't have to.
There'll be a next year.
I know, right?
Yeah, really, next year.
One of the things that the kids' data book, they handed it out, how it is crucial for our students to learn how to comprehend at least at the grade level that they're at, up to the third grade. And we know we've had this discussion in the past, so we're pretty much on the same page as they are. And I was happy to hear that we're kind of ahead of the ball game. Another thing, the state superintendent was pretty an awesome speaker,
She was there.
and how she's actually getting to be known out there, unlike the other state superintendents, and what she's doing, and going out to different agencies and reaching out so they can be part of the organization, or even DEA, the concern of employment for our teachers. She's putting that out, saying we need teachers, and they say, well, a lot of the folks that we deal with just have their GED and or high school diplomas, and it says, well, that's awesome. I said, why? Because we need bus drivers, we need people, maintenance folks, you know, there is employment. We have a dire need for all these folks, so she's really, really doing a phenomenal job out there to getting public education, and she's really, really, really pro public education, yeah.
That's good.
Real quick.
You had something?
I'll go and I'll
Mr.
go after.
Okay.
Just real quick, it was DES,
DES.
not DEA,
well,
the Department of
sorry.
Economic Security.
DEA, well, we discussed DEA as well.
But DES, as you know,
DES,
what they
yeah.
do is they find jobs for people.
Yeah.
So she says, why don't we go and ask them, find us bus drivers? There's like 60 bus drivers from
There's one
one
school
of the
district
districts
that
that needs
needed
60 bus drivers.
60 bus
So
drivers.
she goes, why doesn't DES help us find? But a couple of real quick things, the property. They talked about if you sell property, something really important for us to think about.
Right.
That if we
Oh.
sell our property, their charters and private schools are allowed to bid, and if they're the best bid, then we have to go with their bid, no matter what. Even if it's, and it's not one of the other ones where if you bid, to get fencing, it's the property itself. If they're the ones that bid the lowest, then they're the ones that we have to sell it to. So when we're thinking about selling any property, and we know there might be a large charter school or a large private school coming on board, we've got to think about that. And the last thing is for Javier. I was extremely scared at the cybersecurity one. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know.
That thing is scary. And then we were listening to it when we found out about what happened to Flagstaff. So just at the same time we were listening to what was going on with Flagstaff, and their schools were shut down in those 2 days, and then we're hearing about what could possibly happen. I'm so glad that you're here, but I also know how scary it is.
Yes.
So thank you.
Yes, I'm just one.
I have a question.
Okay.
If we have to go with the lowest bid, we're supposed to make money? Are we supposed to go with the highest bid?
You don't
No?
necessarily have
If
to
we're
go with the
selling
lowest.
property?
Well, the property that
If
Oh,
we're
the
selling
property, yeah.
don't we
Yeah,
go with
you're
the
right, you're
highest
right,
bid?
with the highest bid,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
whoever
Yeah.
gets,
Yeah.
we have to go with the highest bid.
Okay.
That's right.
So
But you're right, thank you.
I'll end with another kind of just a baffling kind of policy decisions that we make. So the tax credit now can be used, Hector, get this, for capital expenditures, right? And so part of this is just the unfair advantage that affluent communities have in raising tax credit, right? And so when it used to be for extracurricular, and you have affluent communities who have the ability to pay and donate, I mean, you're talking people that can actually build buildings and do things like that. So it's just, you think about the charter networks, I mean, you think about how all this works. I mean, there are certain policy decisions that really continue to create greater divide amongst communities of high poverty and those of affluence. And so it just seems to consider as we're thinking about policy and its impact and the votes we make, right, are going to be really important as we see how this state is continuing to kind of challenge us at every level to do right by our kids. So it's good.
Good, thank you. Any future agenda items?
I have one.
Ms. Dong?
Just real quick, I want to talk at one of our next board meetings a little bit about communication, and we used to get some really cool communication things that told us about what are all the different things in every single school, preschool, elementary, middle, high school. They were very simple looking. They weren't very difficult to, it just said, this is what's happening at Los Amigos, this is what's happening at Sunnyside. We have the U of A coming and doing a presentation for scholarships. We have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'd like to just talk a little bit at a board meeting about what are some of the things that we've seen in the past, but maybe what are some of the things we'd like to see in the future as far as board communication with some of these items.
That's it? No, 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 no. Okay, yay. Motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn?
Roll call?
Ms. Dawn?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez? Mr. Padilla? Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
There's one there that Jaramillo missed. It's got the
You
pen
missed
in
one.
it.
Jaramillo missed one.
This one?